Erica, how are you feeling today?
So good afternoon. First of all, I'm feeling good. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. How does it feel to record a podcast?
It's always interesting to share thoughts with someone. Perhaps in a podcast you might be a bit more aware because you're on the spot and other people are going to hear you. But it's always interesting to exchange insights. So I'm looking forward to see where this conversation takes us.
Great. Erica, you've been to TV shows, I believe, and similar settings on both on the web and even live.
Yeah.
How did it came about in the first place?
Right. So first of all, let me clear up why I'd be on TV or why I'd be in these types of
You're a
programs.
star, no?
Or
Yeah.
I didn't make it to Hollywood yet. I'm almost there. I believe a lot in advocating and activism.
Okay.
Activism doesn't need to be by force, slamming my hands and shouting in the street and doing these types of protests, although protests are very useful in society. But activism and advocacy can also happen through other different means. And I like the opportunity of being able, like today, being able to discuss certain insights and so on through various platforms. What I mainly talk about on such platforms is usually related to my work. So I'm a criminologist, so I'd either be advocating about reintegration or about resilience in an individual. So it's just a platform to kind of spread awareness rather than me as Erica. It could be someone else as long as the message is what's important. And you, you host podcasts.
Yes, I do.
So from a different angle.
Yeah.
It must be interesting for you, I think, because you meet a variety.
Yes, one of the drivers for starting the podcast was that I enjoy having conversations and conversations with purposeful conversations and without intellectual conversations.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because we're smart or anything, but I like to have deep conversations that enable me to connect with the person that I'm conversing with. And usually, even if I have friends and circles that I can have conversations with friends that you'll always end up to a certain extent discussing the same things and sharing the same perspective, which is good to a certain extent. So one of the drivers for starting the podcast was to connect with more people and share more insights and discuss other ways of thinking as well.
It's true. And when you speak to people, whether it's in your personal life or your working life or whatever, you become aware. You might not always agree.
Yes.
But you become aware of other standpoints. So I might not always agree with the other person what they are telling me, but now I'm aware that there is that type of outlook on something as well. So it's always interesting to have exchanges.
No, it's good. It's like going abroad. You go abroad to have a good time, to detach a bit from the hustle and bustle of the daily routine, but also to get a fresh perspective on cultures, meeting new people. So it depends on how adventurous you are, but you might spend some time in a hostel rather than a hotel, or backpacking, hitchhiking. So you can be a little bit adventurous on this front.
I love traveling. I really, really love traveling, and it's true. You gain insight and you become again more aware. And traveling is so exciting. Not just because you're going on a holiday or you're going on an adventure. All right, it's there, it's part of the thrill. But let me speak from my angle. I'm so curious to know about the world that I'm part of. I'm so curious to know about the universe. I'm so curious to know about the whole world that's under the sea. And just being able to go somewhere different, in an alley, God knows where, in some weird corner in the world, I'll be like, there's this alley on the same planet where I live.
Yeah.
So that is something I really enjoy when I travel, just exploring and becoming, realizing exactly what I form part of. There's a lot more that I have to explore, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
What purpose is this curiosity fulfilling in your life?
I'm a very curious person, number one. I've always been very curious, and I almost feel lucky that I'm curious. The lucky ones are curious, they say. And you asked me, so like...
The purpose. What
the
is
purpose of my curiosity?
Yeah.
I just like to feel connected, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I like to know everything. But I just like to know what I form part of. I enjoy feeling alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I enjoy feeling a purpose, a sense of belonging. So, I mean, not everyone enjoys traveling, and to each their own. But personally for me, although I love Malta and my home is Malta and I'm very patriotic about my country, our country,
Yeah.
at the same time, I know that Malta is not the whole planet. So the thought of me living from, I don't know, like zero, right? Until the day I die, and I hope that I've got a bit more time left. I hope I'm not cursing myself by saying this.
Well, touch wood.
Touch wood. I think it is a bit of a pity to just be comfortable in your little bubble. Again, to each their own, so I don't judge people who don't enjoy traveling, you know. What brings me happiness does not mean it is the way that it will bring you happiness as well.
I'm one of those persons. I can live without traveling, to be honest. So, yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point of conversation, you see? Like, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
You are happy? Great, good. Now I want to be happy too. But for me, I need to go travel.
It's not
For
a need.
example.
It's rather than... I've lived the grand majority of my life without traveling. Wouldn't have the means to travel when I was younger. So I learned to live without traveling other than going to go to. So, so for me, it's not a need. I enjoy traveling, so it's a time for me to connect with friends or to see different stuff. But it's not a need. I don't need that to discharge or to connect with the world that I'm living in.
That's really interesting, though. And as I said, though, I totally respect that. Because if my perspective or my level or my need is still here, and this says traveling, and yours is still here, and it says being comfortable on my sofa, as an example, then who am I to tell you, no, that's not the way to be happy? But I'm very curious, I am very curious. Like, if you leave me alone here, you tell me I'm going to leave you for 10 minutes. You ever watch those videos that parents put some sweets? You come back, you'll find the plant over there.
You start moving things around.
Oh, one of the microphones will be missing. I'm just curious. Really curious. In a healthy way. Like,
Have you ever got into trouble with this curiosity? I would assume yes.
yes.
Do you have a fun story that you can share?
I do have stories. I'm just seeing which are appropriate.
Yes.
Because most of my silly stories are just that silly of when I was a teenager. You know, in Maltese we say moħirriħ. Literally, your thoughts go by with the wind.
Yeah.
So I have very silly things to say.
What are the lessons that you derive out of your curiosity? So out of all these troubles that you've been through, what are the lessons that you've learned?
Measure twice, cut once. That. I love that I'm a curious person, I really do, because, as I said, for me personally, it serves me as feeling connected, knowing what's going on. But I learned, like, of course, nurture your curiosity, embrace your curiosity as well, because I believe, at least the way it affects me, my curiosity helps me to remain connected to my inner child, to my more fun side. My job is stressful, as everyone's job is stressful, don't get me wrong, but this kind of enables me to remember the fun in life.
Yeah.
You know? Now, however, I want to remain fun, but measure twice, cut once. Like, check what
Wisdom,
you're getting
right?
yourself into. Let's call it wisdom.
Yeah,
Yes, I
it is
guess
wisdom.
so.
So
I guess so. But otherwise, I mean, it's been quite some time since I found myself into trouble. I'm happy to say. How about you, though? Although you're not perhaps the biggest travel fanatic, would you consider yourself as a curious person, you think?
yeah, yes. When I was younger, I used to daydream quite a lot, especially during math lessons. So So I'm curious, and I mean that is why I started this podcast as well. I'm curious about the perspectives and thought process of other people as well. So I'm curious to learn about the human nature and other human beings as well. So that is, I think that is one of my greatest curiosities, to get to know people and what makes them tick, how they reason and why they reason in that way. So that is, I'm curious. So earlier we were mentioning that if I am to watch a movie, I will try to analyze the movie and try to derive lessons on that. So I'm curious on, for example, if I'm reading an article, I would ask myself, what drove the author to write that in that word and using those words.
Wow.
So I tend to look at things from a deeper point of view.
That's quite deep.
So I do ask these questions. It doesn't happen all the time, because otherwise I would fry up my brain. So
And it's good to switch it off.
yes, but I like to watch things with intent as well. So I think I'm curious in that way. Yes.
You're mentioning people and their perspectives. What I also think is very, very interesting, it is beautiful, is that we are so many people in this world living on the same planet. Okay, obviously different cultures comes about, different worlds almost, even different continent can be a whole different world. But ultimately, if, for example, we go small scale, we focus on Malta. Okay, Malta's small, everyone knows what's happening in Malta, we always know what's going on. But at the same time, although we are living in the same context per se, the same societal context, let's put it that way, we all have a different story. That blows my mind.
Yes.
It's incredible. I love it. It's part of why I love traveling, because I like to travel.
Yeah.
I know we end up saying like a local, and then we end up on Google Maps and following Google Maps.
Yes,
but I like to go to these authentic places where I can connect or at least meet or mingle, because it is fascinating.
Yeah.
It is fascinating. We can be looking at this plant and we are looking at something different.
Yes. And that goes hand in hand with the theme of the podcast as well. I like to meet with individuals. They share their own journey of growth, because even though it's growth, it's the plant that you are saying. Everyone sees it from a different point of view, and everyone experiences growth and the plant in a different way. So everyone has experience. Everybody has a story to tell.
That's right.
And so that is what fascinates me as well. So I can very much relate to what you're saying. Besides being curious, you're very creative as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
So, because last time we met, you mentioned that, and even today, we mentioned that you like taking photos, which we can discuss this later on. But you are a person who takes notes by hand, which nowadays is not as common to find that attribute in young people, I would say.
Old school.
Yes, it is quite old school.
Yes, it is. It is.
What's the story behind that?
I like, apart from my curiosity, I like being on top of things. And I just find it almost, I'm not going to say relaxing, let me say maybe it calms down my anxiety perhaps, that I like to have everything handwritten, because as I'm writing, I'm kind of remembering, or perhaps I feel a bit more in control, because I'm physically writing down the appointment, for example, in my diary. It's just more satisfying as well for me. I just feel more organized, because there are many ways that I can describe it, but I feel more organized if I do it myself, if I write it myself. I feel I remember it more, even though I keep getting out my diary every second, but I just feel more in control, sort of. And all in all, it's just as well a system that I got used to, I think.
Have you tried other options?
Not really.
You're not curious enough here.
But let me tell you. It's not that I didn't try other options, because of course with your phone you have a calendar, and it's so efficient and you see everything in front of you. But I think I'm so used to a certain layout. I am a very, very, very visual person. Very. and which is also why I love photos, for
Yeah.
example. How can I explain it? What I look at
Mm-hmm.
almost aesthetically pleases me.
Yeah.
And my diary, for example, there's this website, and I'm not going to do an ad this time. And
I'll have to ask them for sponsorship as well.
yeah, and commission for me. And there's this website where you can literally personalize your year diary.
Okay, all right.
And I chose my layout, so I'd have the whole week laid in front of me. It's full of colors, which I love, colors that I picked.
Okay.
And it's like, when I have the whole week in front of me, even though on the laptop, on the computer, or on the phone, you will technically have the whole week laid out in front of you, it's almost, even sensory-wise, it's more satisfying to be able to physically get my things and move them around. Ultimately, I feel more organized. I know it's a bit far-fetched, perhaps.
Okay.
I've tried to explain this multiple times. I've also attempted... My specs keep falling, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Nobody's
watching.
Nobody's watching. It's just you, me, and the plot. I've tried to explain this to friends or to my siblings. I've tried myself, the whole, inputting things on my phone. It works.
Yeah.
But it's I don't feel happy doing it. I feel more comfortable writing things
Yeah.
down.
If it works for you, it works for you. So
Yeah, maybe I'm just an old person inside, old soul.
yeah, you can be as well. But it's easier to move things around on the PC, on the calendar. So I would say that it's easier. But I do appreciate the feeling that you have when writing things down, and the satisfaction that you get when you cross things out as well.
That's a big one.
So personally, I use both methods. I keep my tasks on. I'd like not to mention the brand now. I became aware of that.
You see?
So I use the.
No one's watching.
Yes. So I use my mobile phone for my calendar. I have an app for my calendar, which is a lifesaver, and for taking notes, I use an app as well. But when I want to really focus and do some deep work, I tend to write things down. But they are usually daily or specific targets that I need to achieve in that particular sitting. So if I'm doing deep work for 2 hours, those are the targets that I need to reach in those 2 hours. If I write them down, I feel more empowered to
complete it.
Yes, more not empowered, but motivated,
perhaps.
and
I know.
I'm trying to look for the right word, but more confident that I will be able to reach them.
Yes.
So it gives me that sort of feeling that once I wrote it down, I have to complete it. So there's an element of accountability there.
I know.
So I use both methods. So I'm really stuck in between here.
No, but what you said makes a lot of sense, because I get that same feeling, especially when I have a deadline or I have no option but to do these. Of course, I mean, you can have the same checklist on your laptop, but I just somehow feel more motivated, like now that it's written down by hand, I have no turning back.
What I find is that using an app is more efficient. So if you just that thought crops up, you just take a note, and then. But if you really want to work on it, you write it down. And even the calendar, it's much more efficient on an app rather than taking diaries and finding the time.
Or when I'll be out with my friends, for example, Friday evening, I don't carry around my diary.
For sure.
You want to meet next Friday? Let me go home and check my diary.
Yeah.
So there are, of course, there are many cons. But
for sure.
I'm comfortable. Till now, I'm keeping up with all my appointments. I made it here today. So yeah. I keep up with my appointments.
Yeah, keeping with the theme that you made it here today, can you recall one decision that had a ripple effect on the person that you are today?
Yes, and it's actually something that sometimes I also remind myself to kind of not keep myself in check, but kind of ground, or if I'm in a situation back cornered against the wall sort of thing. In life, situations happen obviously like for everyone, and there were actually 2 instances where I felt like my life was really shaken up.
Yeah.
these two situations really made me have a good look around myself, but more importantly, at myself, inside myself. And I realized that in both situations, these situations happened years apart. The first instance, the first thing that had happened, kind of instigated this mindset that I'm about to explain. And through the years, I kind of kept building upon it. And then the last instant that had happened kind of rebooted me. And rebooted me to the right direction, sort of. I chose to become better, not bitter. This is something that I constantly say. They are just 3 words, but 3 very powerful words, in my opinion. Because for everything, you have choices. I fully understand that situations affect people. Societal factors, internal factors, psychological. People are complex, and our situations are complex. You know, so of course I fully understand that it is not easy to handle certain situations. Situations which are out of your control are going to impact you and affect you. It is not possible that something that happens to you does not affect you. You might not be aware of it, but it's going to affect you. When you become aware that you are being affected or that you have been affected, it's time to take a decision of, this has affected me, to no longer let this affect control me. What am I going to do with what happened to me? Kind of taking something that others did to you, and instead of letting someone else control your being, grab what had happened to you or what is happening to you, acknowledge that this is happening to you or this had happened to you, and now decide what is going to happen next. Because it is very easy to get negative. It's in our nature to get negative. But once you become a bit aware of what's going on, it's not easier. But it's very important to be conscious, or as conscious as possible, to take the healthiest steps possible. It's not easy, and I'm not a superhuman for doing this. I mean, I have had a support system, and I also did some like soul searching and everything. But it's important to really think, like, what direction do I want my life to go in? What type of person do I want to be? Not that we're going to set everything in a script. Life is meant to be spontaneous. But that kind of self-worth and self-realization of ultimately noticing that at the end of the day, I am my own individual, I am my own being, people and situations are going to affect me. They have, and they will continue to affect me. But if I really want to live, if I really want to enjoy life, get the most out of life, I have to do my utmost to remain resilient, positive, happy, and I decide what your action is going to result in with me. At first, when you are in such a situation, the negative impact is going to be felt first. This is like when you crash a car. First you have the crash, so you're seeing now a damaged car. And then once you notice the car crash, now you have to decide, am I either going to keep driving or try to push the car and the car remains broken? Or I call a mechanic, or then the tow truck comes. So I'm not saying ignore the pain or ignore the situation or water down your feelings, far from it. But when you realize that there's been some type of shake in your world, some interruption, once you become aware, grab that awareness and decide, what do you want, like which direction do you want your life to go in? And I say this in a positive way, in a resilient way, you know, not out of pity or looking down at someone. And I will say it again, it's not easy, you know, so don't feel bad that a situation really took over you and made you sad. Don't feel bad, you are human. And I actually encourage acknowledging and sitting with our emotions. But remember that you are resilient, you are worth love, you are worthy, you are capable. It's like, it's a constant balance, sort of. So,
At that time, how, well, first of all, it's not an easy hurdle to overcome, because you're, at least what I'm understanding about what you said and what you went through, is that you were a constant battle with yourself and with your own thoughts and emotions as well, because you had to develop a sort of a third person within yourself in order to keep everything in
Yes.
check. So that is not easy for sure. What kept you afloat?
curiosity. There we go again, full circle.
Okay.
Because I know that there is tomorrow, and there is tomorrow, and hopefully there's going to be the day after that. So it's like, am I going to live every single day? You know, with a negative mindset? Of course, there are those negative days. But what keeps me afloat, what keeps me going, is the joy of knowing that I still have to experience my next best day of my life.
Okay. So hope.
As that,
Okay.
exactly. I still, this is not the saddest moment in my life. There's going to be an even sadder moment, and that's okay. But there's another moment to face.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel excited for life, curious about life, hopeful for life. But at the same time, we are like the captains of our own ship. So it's very important to constantly remain aware of your own actions as well. Because like others have affected you, you will affect others as well. And although perhaps you would not intend to hurt or intend to insult or intend to make someone else feel uncomfortable, without us noticing sometimes negative experiences that affected us, without us intending, my negative experience might ripple effect, and with how I speak to you, I might negatively impact you. And then we'll have the domino effect. You know, so you're not just safeguarding yourself by being a bit more of a healthier version of you.
Yeah. It's the words that we tell ourselves. So the way we communicate with ourselves, the words we use, if we are more granular in this, the words that we use to communicate with ourselves, I mean, at some point in time, everyone self-talks, right? Either internally or out loud. So at some point in time,
Both.
everyone does it. So the words that we choose play a very important role in the way that we speak to others and the way that we behave with others as well. And earlier you mentioned that you became better, not bitter. What is the gift that you're giving others as a result to the lessons that you've learned through these two experiences?
When it comes to others, firstly, as company, as a friend, as a colleague, as whatever, as long as I'm in a social situation, automatically the energy is going to be lighter. It's going to be more positive. I'm a huge resilience fan. You know, it's something that I'm always preaching about, being resilient, because I know that resilience is inside all of us. So perhaps, depending on the type of conversation that's being held, through my outlook on things, I can kind of really empower people resilience-wise. And all around, though, I think it's just a more positive atmosphere. And as well, when you choose a healthier lifestyle, you automatically and then start getting more creative and healthier ideas, you know, and you can be of a better support for a friend or for a loved one. So I think ultimately it's that, nothing out of this world.
Okay.
It's just a better energy to be around.
Okay.
And that and then ripple effects into the other person's life.
Which is very beneficial when you're working with people as well, especially people who are vulnerable as well.
Yes.
On that front, how do you, so we have an emotionally taxing job day to day, right? So how do you manage those emotions internally?
Well, in the beginning, when I started, it used to be a little bit of a challenge, obviously, you know, when you're still doing at something, because out of care, you end up really taking on board a client's situation, to put it that way.
Yeah.
And you start to internalize it, and now that problem is yours.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I still care a lot, otherwise I can't do what I do, but I do create a bit of a boundary of understanding that, listen, the client I have in front of me, the situation that we are exploring right now, this is not my situation, this is not my problem, it is his or her situation, and they feel comfortable enough, safe enough to explore it with me. So it's not that I am shrugging off responsibility, far from it, but I'm giving them the space. I'm not stealing the show away from them, you know, but I'm there for you. So I remind myself that I am joining, guiding a person through their journey, rather than being full on in the journey with the person. It's not my journey. I'm tagging along, sort of,
Yeah.
and trying my best to guide you, so long as you agree with the guidance, because I can't push you in the right direction either, because then I'll be taking away the independence of the person.
Okay. Erica, you've started off your career as a teacher, and then you took the course of criminology, and now you're a criminologist. What internal resources you had to develop further from a teacher to a criminologist?
To be honest, I think of this often. The skills I learned through teaching, I use on a daily basis as a criminologist. Really. Because a teacher, when you're a teacher, I used to teach English. I know English, I know grammar. So to teach, you are really doing it for the benefit of someone else. You are really doing that. When and then you work in such a context of working with clients with the cap of a criminologist, sort of, again, you are in that situation to guide others. It's not for you. And that is a huge similarity that I found between the two.
Okay.
What I really kind of strengthened, skills which I gained through life and skills which I gained through teaching, and I keep strengthening with this career choice, communication skills and understanding different perspectives, strategic planning, a lot of strategic planning, because the same as I used to do a lesson plan, and I used to do a very detailed lesson plan.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And it was handwritten.
Oh, of course, for sure.
The same way that I used to do a lesson plan, I tweaked that idea and I kind of create a plan for the person that I would be guiding or working with. Not a rigid plan, theory, but kind of...
the learning outcomes.
Exactly,
What
like
to achieve.
outcomes of where we're going to go with this. Not outcomes that I wish, but outcomes that are realistic for the person in front of me. We don't need to reach all the outcomes, because unlike a teacher, unlike in a school setting, we don't have an exam at the end of this. But this kind of ideology that it's good to have a direction of where you're going to go with a classroom, I believe in it a lot. And I know other professionals do it. In my field there are care plans and everything, but it's something that I really kept on believing in. You know, it's good to have a direction with a person, with someone you're working with, direction with when you're working on a project. And another point, I used to notice that my kids, when I was a teacher, they learned the most through fun, through interactiveness. When I used to do a whole day preaching about grammar,
It doesn't work.
and I used to lose my own train of thought, and what am I talking about right now? You know, I see a random ein or a ied of Maltese, for example. You know, and it's like I was noticing that this is not the only way to teach. And if the teacher is getting frustrated, let alone the students that are being forced to sit in the class. So I started incorporating more fun activities. For example, I used to do a whole day. We used to do kind of like a treasure hunt with my students around Medina. But ultimately they were learning prepositions, grammar, you know, because they'd have like a adventure sheet that they have to follow, and I was teaching the same lesson ultimately.
And it's more effective because you're associating things with memory, with it's more using the senses. Your sight, there is smell, there is the experiences that you're enjoying something, and you're putting many of our senses into practice, so it's easier for our brain to recall that memory.
That's right, it's a moment.
Yeah.
You're creating a moment. And that is something that, and then I was having fun with them, you know? So it's something that I really realized, that there are different ways to connect or to transfer knowledge or exchange information with people. And that is something, and then I started to apply for me as Erica when communicating. So I really realized that not everyone learns in the same way. I am one of them. I was that person in class that I would just sit at the desk and look at the board and what is this? And I just zone out. You know, so I was one of them. As I'm saying, as a teacher, obviously now it was even more amplified, realizing that not only that I don't learn in the traditional way, but the kid in front of me doesn't even learn in my way or the traditional way. Some people like to watch videos, some people need to write everything down and to play a game. Some people are actually more comfortable to sit in class and stay quiet and listen and write. There are so many different ways of learning. Ultimately, in all our different ways, you are somehow creating a moment to remember that, to remember what you're learning. That I also transfer it now at the current roles that I play, that when I wish to educate or empower or guide whoever I have in front of me, after getting a bit more familiar with the person and I start to realize perhaps their character or their likes or dislikes, I try to find ways that it is interesting for them to engage in the session, for example. So sometimes we literally do a group project, which takes around a week. You know, it's not just colouring in, it's a project, everyone's hands-on, we're all discussing why we are drawing this picture, for example, and as we're drawing, someone randomly remembers a memory, has nothing to do with what we are doing, but now we are enhancing the moment, and it's very beautiful, innovative, and a breath of fresh air, because then we'll get stuck in a routine.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the goals of my roles are the same. They're always there, the goals, they're always going to be fixed. But how are you going to approach and get to those goals?
Yeah.
Be creative. Find different ways to not only enrich the experience of your client or whoever you are working with, but also enrich your own experience. Enjoy what you're doing. Love what you're doing. Everyone has a difficult job. So I'm not saying I go to work every day. Woo! You know, I have a full day here. It's not always like that. I'm not saying anything that's a secret. I'm sure you can have those days too sometimes.
For sure, yeah.
But help yourself to a happy day, sort of.
Help yourself to a happy day. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very hard as well. So I say this all the time, and it's a known fact as well. Our brains are wired to think in a negative way. And they are built that way, evolutionary, so that they can protect us from harm. So it's double the effort to think positive and to think happy thoughts as well. So as simple as it may sound, and as cliche as it may sound as well, it's very hard as well. So we have to consciously make an effort to think positively and to see the glass half full as well at times. And so I'm a firm believer that you can derive many lessons even from dark times, and even if you're not able to do it at that time, because obviously of the situation that it's a difficult situation. Sometime after that, it's good to reflect on the way that you reacted, how that things made you feel, your emotions that you were experiencing at that moment.
That's right.
Your thoughts your thought process at that moment, and what you can learn from that particular situation. Sometimes we're speaking about this before as well. Sometimes we tend to blame the world for our mishaps. And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, not sometimes, I would dare to say that all the times we have to ask ourselves, what am I contributing to this situation? What am I doing? It's for this situation to evolve in this way. It's not coming from a blame perspective, so I'm not advocating that we blame ourselves or we take the blame or for us to feel guilty. We were discussing about this before as well. But we take ownership and accountability of our actions. We realize that we might do things which affect others in a particular way and they make them tick, and perhaps behave in other ways which make us tick in return. So we have to see what are we putting into the recipe that we are creating ourselves in. So if this kind of situation is happening between two people, it can be a friend or a partner, it's usually, it takes two to tango, right? So it's usually there's some fault from each party at times. Most of the times, I would say.
Yes, and the fault that, as we were saying before, you might not be even doing it intentionally.
Yes, for sure. It might be your nature.
Exactly.
And you might be aware of it and not aware of it at the same time.
Say it's just me.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's why communication is very important. And it's not just to communicate. It's not. This is the. In English, this is very nice. In Maltese, we don't have this verb. You would know. The hearing and listening. So when we communicate, it's important that we listen so that we can reason things out and take conscious action to make amends. It might not be perfect, so we're not a switch that we're going to change immediately, but at least we're trying to improve on that for the sake of the other person as well. So
it's a two-way thing.
It's a two-way street.
It's going to have a double positive effect.
Yes. Yeah. And if we're just hearing the conversation, we're not internalizing anything. It stops there. We just heard it, and it went in from one ear and went out from the other ones.
Exactly.
So it didn't really make sense. But we have to listen and make a conscious effort to improve upon that. And I'm not saying that we should change for others, and I'm not saying even to let ourselves be so malleable that we change for every situation. When we receive feedback, we have to sift through the feedback as well. We have to see what, as you said, we have to see and reflect on the feedback and ask ourselves, if I apply this feedback, will it lead me to the person that I want to be? If it's a yes, you apply. If it's a no, you derive the lessons on it or you discard it completely. So it depends. We have to sift.
Exactly. And you were mentioning just now that it's like it's good to see the glass half full.
Yeah.
And I agree fully that it doesn't mean, like, if you're in a bad situation or whatever, or there's a problem. It doesn't need to be by force an explosion.
Yeah.
A problem. The electricity's out. A problem.
Yeah.
It is important that although, yes, let's keep moving, let's stay positive, at the same time we have to acknowledge the situation, because otherwise we're going to become passive.
Yeah.
So one of the ways of remaining positive, you can actually be sad and remain positive, but look at the situation that you are in and say, like, okay, this is the situation that I am in. Can I control it? No, otherwise I wouldn't be in it. But I can work with it. And in that situation that you are in, when you are feeling a bit more clear-headed, because you don't need an answer
right away
immediately, you don't. In fact, it's better that you take a breather first, because you might end up moving or thinking impulsively. It's very healthy to work with the situation instead of avoiding and putting on the happy mask, because then we don't want to be fake. We want to be authentic. It's good to be authentic.
Even with ourselves.
Of course. So when you and then realize, like, okay, I am in this situation, how can I be positive? Which is difficult, because especially if it is a very disheartening situation, you're going to feel sad. I encourage you to feel your feelings. But what are my options? And just by asking, let me clarify it, what are my positive, healthy, good choice options, automatically, slowly, without realizing, you're going to start getting more positive. Why? Because you're moving towards a solution. A solution that's going to fix or amend or repair the situation that you are in. It doesn't mean that the problem is going to be 100% fixed, but you're either going to live differently or experience things differently. So just by at least having a plan, some options, some solutions, you can then start working towards that solution that you thought about, and slowly you can start working on it while you're sad.
Yeah.
You know, but that subconsciously you're actually being hopeful.
Yeah.
You know?
The process is very uncomfortable,
It is.
but the result, I think it's very rewarding and worthwhile. The hassle and the hardship that you have to go through in order to arrive at that stage.
And if you really want to live a better life, it is you who has to take the decision to live a better life. Different situations, different circumstances, so different things apply. But ultimately, you have the power in you, you have the resilience in you, and you are worthy enough to decide that you want to live better.
Yeah. Erica, you're a co-founder.
No. Not exactly. We don't have those words per se.
Okay. But you started, or you are the mastermind behind the concept of Ivy.
Let's slow it down, because these are very big compliments. Very big compliments. Thank you. The way it is, though, just so I can clarify it. I'm the leader of this group Ivy, Interrupting Violence Towards Youth, but I wouldn't say co-founder, and I definitely wouldn't say mastermind. It was actually kind of like a joint collaboration.
Okay.
It is like a joint initiative with RISe Foundation, which is a foundation which caters and aids and assists marginalized families and their children.
Okay.
So they also have a kind of like a sister branch sort of a service called SOAR, which caters specifically for domestic violence and intimate partner violence survivors and their victims. At present it is catered mostly for females, I believe, but that's the gist of it basically. And through studying criminology and life and whatever, I always wanted to do something, even as a teacher, to contribute towards the strengthening of our approaches and the strengthening of self-belief when it comes to what you deserve and what is healthy and how you can be healthy in a relationship. Because the truth is, domestic violence and intimate partner violence in Malta is it's horrific. It is horrific. The realities are horrific. So, as a teacher, I always had that strong belief and wish to contribute somehow. Started studying criminology. Long story short, of course, the sensation and the role I felt I had to contribute towards society, to do something about it, it only enhanced. It only got stronger, because now I'm really studying in depth about perpetrators, offenders, the whole lot, victims, indirect victims. So I'm like, obviously, I have to do something now. What's my excuse? Before it was a wish, but now I have proper tools.
Yeah.
So things kind of fell in place alone, because I had a meeting with Sancha and Antid about something totally different. They were curious when I told them that I'm a criminologist, and we were just discussing. They asked me kind of what were my driving points to get me into criminology and where I would like to go with criminology. I mentioned about domestic violence. I firmly believe in proactive approaches. Reactive approach, the reactive approaches we have now, obviously they need to remain there, and they need to even be further enhanced. Like the professionals that we have working right now in the field are doing a fantastic job, but of course they require the state, other NGOs, other entities to empower them even further, right? Reactive approaches are important because the problem is there and we're going to have a negative result, so they have to be there, right? But let's not just focus on having a reactive solution, sort of, if you can call it a solution, but let's not just focus on the result. Let's focus on what contributes to get to this result. So what is the problem in the engine that's giving us this bad output, sort of. So whilst reactive is needed, proactive is crucial. Because through proactive, you are going to minimize or lessen likelihood of victimization, of re-victimization. Proactiveness, you're also going to minimize the likelihood of offending or re-offending. It's just a more holistic approach. And I went and explained to them this.
Okay.
And sparks started flying. They are a very innovative bunch at San Gianantid. I would like personally give a shout out to Melanie and Nora, fantastic, and Nadine, she's my coordinator of IB.
Okay.
And we just started thinking and explaining and exploring. And they told me, you want to do something with it, with this idea? Say no more. And they...
You already signed the contract.
And I feel lucky enough that they trusted me with this this venture, you could say. There's a lot of plans and a lot of goals in mind. So, and as I said, I feel grateful because I just walked in first day meeting these people. Thank God our views, our morals, and also our enthusiasm really linked up.
That's
and
very
we
crucial.
just
Yeah.
we just ended up fueling each other up even more, and we left with an idea. And a year and a half later or so, here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First off, how obviously it's a very sensitive topic packed with various emotions and delicate situations and stories in this. How do you tread in this subject proactively? How deal with that? Being proactive but aware not to harm or to cause any emotional distress to victims and even the offenders as well. So how do you tread this?
We are very awareness focused, right? But in a very positive stance.
Okay.
If you had to have a look at our content or activities that we host for youth, everything is colorful. We never use grievous words or like really harsh imagery. It's good to show the dark realities. It's very important for people to be aware of what's going on around us. Yes, let's scare the people with the truth, of course. But considering that our target audience are youth and young adults, so that means we are dealing with people who are, by the laws of Malta, sort of by the guidelines of Malta, between 13 and 30 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm still a youth.
Technically, yes.
And you don't want to scare a young person on something that can actually be and actually should be so beautiful. So our aim is not that we start shouting, don't let this person treat you like this. No, rather you have lots of great skills, you have great abilities, you have great personalities. Recognize these great qualities in you. Recognize that each other and other people have good qualities in them. Realize that you deserve positive encounters. You deserve safety. You deserve love. You deserve care. You deserve being acknowledged.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you deserve these positive influences, others around you also deserve these positive influences. So it's a bit of a twofold situation. We focus a lot on the resilience and the self-worth of the individual. So our content and our activities and everything that we do, because we do so many things, they are very individualized. It's going to speak to everyone. But it's not selfish in the way that you're just going to think about yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're also going to realize the worth of others. And that way, the aim is to interrupt the toxic mentalities, to interrupt violence towards youth. Ivy.
That's the commercial right there.
Yes.
No, but it's very refreshing to see that we are focusing on self-appreciation and realizing the gifts or virtues that we have internally, and the way that they make us who we are, the impact of these virtues and all the beautiful things that we have inside of us have an impact on other people as well. And we acknowledge that other people have similar, the same, or different, completely different virtues and other positive aspects about themselves.
Exactly.
Whilst also becoming aware of the negative attributes as well, because that is a reality. We are made of both positive and negative attributes, we all are. It's just about managing ourselves and to respect other people as human beings. So that is essentially what it is, to respect ourselves enough, but also to respect other people as well as we would respect ourselves.
That's right.
But if we can't respect ourselves, we won't be able to respect others.
Exactly. And you mentioned also showing the negatives, right? In fact, we even explain and educate and whatever about the impacts of DV and IPV. So we even bring forward that, listen, there are these behavioral warning signs.
Yeah.
There are these physical warning signs. There are these, I don't know, there are these warning signs, right?
Yeah.
But why do we and how do we address the results of domestic and intimate partner violence? We do it in a way of kind of look out for your friend sort of way. You know, how to know when to ask for help, how to know when to reach out for support, how to know when to approach a friend and see if they are okay. Are you noticing these signs? Relax. It doesn't mean that there's something, but if you are concerned, let's see how we can tackle it. You know, and also, you said it perfectly. We have to look at everyone, because especially in a relationship, there's not one person.
Yeah.
So it's useless targeting just survivors, because in a relationship, it's not going to be just the survivor, or a survivor and the perpetrator, or a survivor and another survivor. There's a multitude of people that can form part of relationships, right? So in fact, apart from IV, looking past barriers such as gender, for example, sexuality, religious beliefs, cultural backgrounds, economic levels, that doesn't matter to us. And it doesn't matter, but we also put a bit of a spotlight on offenders is something I say so often that it's stuck in my mouth. We also shine a bit of a light on people who might be toxic in relationships,
exhibiting negative behavior.
Exactly. So how can we do that? Because we cannot just focus on the survivor. It's useless tackling the survivor and leaving the perhaps toxic people like nothing is going on. We forget about them, try to focus on them, but the problem is still running around.
The issue with that is that toxicity and toxic relationships have become a buzzword nowadays as well, so we have to use it responsibly as well.
That's right.
What would be a healthy definition according to you, or Ivy, or what you preach? What would be a healthy definition of a toxic relationship or a toxic person?
So, since relationships are just that, relationships, they are private, they are intimate. Don't believe what you see online and the happy photos or no photos, because even if you don't post a photo, they say, Mela, they broke up. A relationship, no one really knows what's going on between that relationship. So there's no set of rules per se to say, because this and this is happening, so you're in a toxic relationship. The dynamics are personal between each relationship. But there are 2 points which I do believe in. First of all, notice patterns. I get angry. I'm sure you get angry. You'll be angry if I break this, for example. You know. So it's it's very normal to get angry. It's healthy to get angry. But how often and how is that anger? So there's one way if your partner gets angry and then goes silent and cools off, maybe he or she spends an hour in the other room watching TV and then they come back, but it's another thing if you start noticing certain patterns, like always punching stuff or breaking stuff or coming very up close and personal, almost threatening. Other patterns like being shady, or you feel confused, constantly confused with your partner. Confusion is just that. If you're feeling confused, then go with that gut feeling. But notice patterns, because getting angry doesn't mean that.
Anger, it's an emotion. It's what would you do? What would you do with the anger? Is that the problem? Anger is a neutral emotion, like sadness, happiness. But it depends on what you do. You might be happy and start breaking things, but sometimes we associate the emotion of anger with bad connotations, which is true, because through anger we might harm others or things. But we have to keep in mind that anger is a neutral emotion. It's what we do with the anger that's the problem.
Yes. And with the happiness.
Yes, well, yeah.
Because some people can go haywire and go binge drinking or misuse drugs,
Yes.
So what are we going to do with the emotion? But see the patterns of that conduct. Apart from that, though, because patterns very often are overlooked, that's just her character. Now it passes, so it can be overlooked. Focus and realize, when your partner gets angry, do you feel scared? It's one thing that your partner is angry, and maybe you know that you said a word extra or two and you say, it's better I don't say anything for now. That's one thing. But if the way your partner gets angry, you get scared, and there's a particular sensation, it's a feeling that you can't even write down or give an explanation, you will know what I'm talking about, unfortunately, if you'll be in the situation or if you were in the situation. If you are scared and you don't feel safe with the way your partner gets angry, that is unfortunately a red flag that I strongly suggest that the person does not ignore. Again, don't jump to immediate conclusions, but the anger thing, how your partner gets angry, if you feel really scared, reach out.
Speaking of reaching out, some people might be too scared to reach out or don't know from where to start. What would be your guidance on this? How can people reach out?
Well, it's important to feel safe when you reach out. And by feeling safe, I mean physically safe and emotionally safe as well. So when you feel ready, because that's it, you have to feel ready because you're about to face your realities, to express yourself or to share with other people what's going on. Start off perhaps with a friend or a family member or someone that's close to you, or if you're at school, a teacher, guidance counselor, who you know though that they are someone safe. So, for example, if you know that your mom's character is patronizing, if your mom is the type of person perhaps who looks down on you or thinks less of you, and you know that everything you do for her it's wrong, I'm not telling you don't speak to your mom, but considering the delicateness of the situation, you want to be believed because you should be believed. You want to feel safe. You don't want to feel stupid for being in this situation. So you don't need to reach out by the book to your parents or to your best friend or to whoever, because that's how it should go. Who you feel comfortable with, speak to them. So that is like the first step I would suggest. As things escalate though, hopefully they don't escalate too much, because then you don't want to wait too long. technically you file a police report and that will then hopefully by time get into the court system. But let's forget that, because the truth is there are delays in these things, right? The backlog is galore. But ultimately you need to be safe. Now whether you go to court or whether you never go to court, you have to feel safe. The safest way is to form a safety plan. The way to form a safety plan is to reach out to services who rationally, who are out of the situation looking in, can guide you toward your safety. The facts are that when a survivor, because I no longer like to use the word victim, even if you are in the abusive relationship, so long as you are still pushing through, no matter the strength that you have, you are surviving. So it is important that a survivor reaches out to services like SOAR, or the Domestic Violence Unit, or the Domestic Violence Agency as well, if I'm not mistaken. And together with a professional, with a social worker or with a therapist, they will guide you in the most convenient and comfortable and safest way for you to get out of that relationship. Because as I was saying, it is the most crucial moment when a survivor is trying to leave a relationship. Unfortunately, they are at high risk over there. But although you are at high risk, and this is IV stance, and then, although you are at high risk, there are safe ways and there are people who care, and you have the capability and you have the resilience. Yes, there's a risk, but if you do it safely, you're going to do it safely. And that is something, like I said, yes, we see the negatives on the news and then on the media, and it's important, right? But as well, let's give the feeling of hope. Because if you are just going to see constantly a black bruised woman, a black and blue bruised woman, or male, right? Because anyone can be in these situations, you might, not by the intention of the platform who's publishing this information, because they're publishing the truth, but you might and then start to kind of do the link of, that happens to me, look how sad that woman or that man is in that photo. That's how I'll be in the dark. So you are also giving a negative connotation with that image, which is effective. But let's not totally brush off the element of hope. Because once we lose hope, we don't see the point.
Speaking of hope, you're working on some interesting projects in order to even support further your initiative.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, along the year we like to do like little activities and events. But now I'm very excited about it. We are working towards publishing a youth book, and this youth book, I won't give too many details because I want you to read it.
Spoiler alert for the listeners only.
Nothing out of the world. It's not like the Pandora box, but it's a very colorful and hopeful and fun book, where it is compiled of short stories written by a volunteer and a dear friend of mine, Leanne, and I really appreciate that she contributed so much to this. So it's compiled of short stories, and then there are also guidance pages, which then have been compiled through myself and through the guidance of Sanjan Antit. So it was a collaboration, right? These short stories include our 3 mascots. We have Ruby, Laila, and Alex. They are 3 mascots which don't conform to any particular identity or anything. You can resonate with what resonates with you, sort of. And in the short stories, we're going to be observing different relationships. So parental relationship, friend relationships that youth find themselves in. With guidance and then of how you can amplify to get the very best out of this relationship. So again, the book is positive.
Okay.
Tackling the same thing, but it's positive. It's not the only thing that has to be done, so it cannot just be things like ivy. It's very important that we have at the other end of the stick.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to focus on the positive. We cannot, life is very stressful as it is.
Yeah.
We cannot also be scared of relationships, which a good, healthy relationship can be so fulfilling and beautiful. You know, so let's highlight that. Let's see what we are worthy of, rather than, no, I'll never speak to a boy. So yeah, so hopefully by the end of the summer, just before
Okay, very
scholastic,
soon.
yeah, oh yes.
Okay, all right. So it's quite well progressed.
Yes, it's been in the pipelines for quite some time.
Okay, all right.
Everyone's been super patient with me because I wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, and at 2 a.m, I'm sending an email to the foundation. Otherwise, it will slip my mind. So yes, we are very, very near.
Okay.
The book will be free of charge.
Okay.
The book is going to be in English and in Maltese.
Okay.
And it's going to be free of charge for youth, for young adults, for schools.
And it will be available in schools, or they can pick it up, or
Both.
okay.
Both. The end goal is that it is a book for teens to like have a look at.
Yeah.
But if used correctly, it can be a very useful educational tool.
Okay.
So the aim is also to distribute them for free at schools, where they could be placed at the library. Or, very idealistic, perhaps it could be used to contribute to a PSHG lesson, for example,
Yeah.
where our teachers are so passionate. I really believe that.
Yeah.
I really believe that the teachers that we have in Malta genuinely care. So I'm sure that in PSHG lessons, at some point it's being tackled, you know, love and self-love and whatever. So for example, Ivy's youth book could be a contributing factor. Let's have a look at one of the stories today and do a bit of a class discussion, for example.
Yeah.
So that is
It's
hopefully
incorporating the fun element during the lessons, right?
exactly.
Very nice. I wish you all the best of luck for this.
Thank you.
For this initiative. I think having such resources at hand is very important as well, because sometimes there are so much information out there that being someone in this situation, I can understand that it's very hard for you to even grasp at, especially with all the emotions and that would be passing through your heart and brain and regard that you don't know from where to start. So having such resources is very helpful, especially to youths who are at an age where they are still making sense out of these situations as well.
Exactly.
So well done and kudos to that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Erica, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you, as always. And thank you for asking me some very interesting questions. You made me think during the podcast as well, so I appreciate it a lot.
I told you I'm curious.
Yes.
So if we can keep rolling, I can get out a notepad and ask you other questions, and I can think of them. No, but really thank you for having me, and I really appreciate individuals like you who, from your own platforms and means and ways, in your case you're using a podcast, you're opening the door to other people, other perspectives, as you were saying, kind of sharing your floor. You could be here talking to the audience, you could just talk about yourself.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So you are dedicated enough and caring enough to say, hey, come sit on the chair and let's see where this conversation takes us. It's very interactive, so I always enjoy speaking with you.
Thank you, Erica, for the nice, but that's very encouraging as well. So
Very
thank you for your
welcome.
time and for your kind words as well.